Okay, uh, so let's begin our national webinar organized by DRSO. So I welcome you all, whoever is on Zoom or on Facebook. So at very first, we want to apologize that we at most can accommodate 100 participants on Zoom meeting. So we have to restrict that, and other participants we have to guide them to Facebook Live. So this meeting will be streaming live on our Facebook page of Democratic Research Scholar Organization. And if you comment there also, we have volunteers who will direct that question to our moderator today. Okay, let me introduce myself. I am Dibbo Shankar Das. I am doing my PhD in condensed matter physics in Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai. Let me begin with a quote by Carl Sagan. He once told, "Societies will, of course, wish to exercise prudence in deciding with technologies, that is, which application of science are to be pursued and which not. But without funding basic research, without supporting the acquisition of knowledge for its own sake, our options become dangerously limited." So if you see the current scenario in the country, not current, maybe for the last 5, 6, 7 years, maybe, you will find that this fundamental research is in grave danger, I should say like that. And we have several problems like curtailment of fellowship, irregular disbursement of fellowship, and several things. And in this recent COVID situation also, these problems have become even more severe. Several scholars, they haven't received their fellowship for months, like 7 months, 8 months. So their situation is not at all very different than a daily wager who is suffering in this pandemic. So uh, for these reasons, we need a strong scholar voice around the country. And probably today's moderator will discuss something about what from our organization DRSO we are trying to do. But let me say that 2 months back, we started a signature campaign, and surprisingly, we got about 2,500 signatures around the country. And we submitted that to different central government funding agencies. Then we decided to discuss these issues, and not only to discuss, but to know the root cause of this crisis. Let's organize a national level webinar. And in the meantime, this National Education Policy 2020 has also published. And I hope Professor Banerjee will discuss about this policy as well in the webinar. And without further delay, let me introduce today's speaker and moderator. Today we have among us Professor Soumitra Banerjee. He is a professor in IISER, Kolkata. He is actively involved in research work. His area of interest is nonlinear dynamics, bifurcation theory, etc. Apart from his academic works, he is also involved in science movement for quite a long time now. He is one of the main organizers of India March for Science. He is also General Secretary of the science organization called Breakthrough Science Society. And as a moderator, today we have Dr. Argho Das. He is a postdoctoral fellow in International Center for Theoretical Sciences, Bengaluru. And also he is one of the joint conveners of DRSO. So I hope Argho will tell something about our organization details. So over to you, Argho.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible, Argho.
Thanks. Okay, thank you, Dibbo, for a nice introduction to this program. So, yeah, I am supposed to talk something about DRSO. Before briefly, I must mention that this is a very special occasion. Yesterday, it was 2nd of August 2020, which had been the 160th birthday of Sir Prafulla Chandra Ray, who is a great pioneer of scientific research in India. And also, as I feel, he is one of the highest emblems of ethics and humanity in the scientific arena. So this is really a great opportunity to also pay respect to him, which I do. And now I also want to mention that this is also the 200th birth year or bicentenary year of great Vidyasagar, who is actually the pioneer of modern education and one of the greatest persons of Indian Renaissance. So, and of course, actually he is the person with whom modern scientific thinking actually is introduced in a very strong form in India. So, and in their continuation, we are standing here and talking today. So, talking about DRSO, so just in a single line, I believe this is a collective effort by concerned research scholars who want to carry forward the inheritance of the great persons I just talked about or mentioned about. And the idea was in 8 years back in 2012, in some certain circumstance, research scholars in some handful of institutions in Kolkata came together and started discussing about the issues. Initially, we were isolated. We want to talk about our own issues. We are actually confined within our institutional boundaries. But gradually, it came out that all the problems, all the issues we face, there is a very common connection among them. The nature is very common. And so it came to our mind that, of course, then there must be some common root cause, and we need to understand that and we need to fight that. And with this thought, the organization came into being in 2012 October. So it is almost 8 years now. And research scholars themselves from this organization, and for last 8 years, on several issues related to research scholars fellowships, other funding issues, the issues of our future, the problem of infrastructure, and several other things we have been trying to put up, trying to organize scholars on these matters, and at the same time trying to build up a solidarity among research scholars throughout the nation. While we go ahead with the efforts, and there are several quite large nationwide movements that have been organized by our organization and jointly with some other research scholars also, you are all aware of. While doing this movement, this thing came into this thing surfaced time and again that okay, there are some certain demands, there are some.
Yeah, or now we can start.
Yeah, so I better switch off my video.
Yes, yes.
I think. Yeah. So internet issues. Sorry for the interruption. So yeah, I just continue. So I was about to tell that all these problems, all these movements we are doing. So there are some problems that is getting resolved. For example, said discontinuation of fellowship, a non-net fellowship or some other fellowship, which is scholars are not getting for months. We conduct a movement, then for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, the fellowship come. But again, the same problem appear. It often happens that when 2 problems getting resolved, 3 more problems are coming up. So naturally it come to, I mean, in our discussion that what is going wrong, what is the thing that is really going wrong, in which the problems are not really getting resolved to its root. So DRSO, to my knowledge, not only the first scholars organization in India, but the only organization, research scholar organization so far, which really wants to understand the problems by their nature and accordingly build up our solidarity and movement so that the root cause of the problems can be resolved. This is why not only some demands, not only some agenda, but really a thorough understanding of the policies and the way research is being directed in India need to be understood. And this is why DRS have conducted such seminars, such programs and analysis kind of things in past years. And recently in COVID situation, there are some new level of changes that is being taken up in India's science and education scenario. Some of which Dibbo already mentioned, that there are some acute problems that came up during the COVID situation, in which we conducted a signature campaign. Many of uh, the scholars who is present here who participated there also. And at the same time, while we are really trying to resolve the problem to its root, we need to understand the things, the changes and the policies that is coming in this time. So this is why this webinar, and as Dibbu introduced Professor Soumitra Banerjee, I just want to mention that he was there right from the onset of the movements and initiatives of DRSO, and his thoughts and ideas really helped us in understanding how the things are going to evolve and accordingly build our movements and solidarity. So we hope in this current situation, Professor Soumitra Banerjee will be, will analyze the situation, and that will help us in guiding our own efforts. So with this, I would like to call Professor Soumitra Banerjee to deliver his speech.
Thank you, Anku. Can you hear me all right? Am I properly audible?
A little louder, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, now this
hold
is.
the microphone. Yeah, closer to my mouth. Okay. Thank you, Argo and Dibbo Shankar, for organizing this webinar, where I have an opportunity to meet, albeit online, the PhD students from various places. The overall topic, as I've understood, the topic is not all that important. What is really important is what the organizers of this program wanted me to focus on. This is basically the research scenario of the country and the specific situation that is being faced because of the COVID pandemic. Not in general, but with particular reference to the situation that the PhD students are facing. If we start from a general picture, then we'll see that in this country, the research is conducted in various types of institutions, the universities, the typical research-only institutions like the CSIR labs, like the DBT labs, DST labs, and the IITs, IISERs, NITs. These are different systems. So the PhD students find themselves doing research as a part of different systems. It is not one system that is there in the country. And each system has its specialty, peculiarity, and problems. In our country, due to some reason, the universities have been seen by the people in the government as places which are mainly meant for training undergraduates, maybe the master's level, but that PhD or research is also conducted in the universities, and therefore the facilities, necessary facilities have to be created in the universities. That often has eluded the attention of most governments so far. So the university system has, I would say, in some ways been neglected, while the IIT system, the NIT system, the ISER system, and the research labs have been given a different kind of treatment. That doesn't mean that it's been satisfactorily funded. No, that's not true. But it is a different kind of system. In some institutions, the faculty members are overtly engaged in teaching. In some institutions, they have full time to devote to research. So there are differences as felt by the PhD students. And overall, the funding for science and technological research, I would not say only science and technology, but overall research has been much smaller than what is expected in a country that aspires to be a scientifically upcoming nation. If you see the investment in science and technology in most other advanced countries, then it is one kind of a picture. But if you also see those other scientifically upcoming countries, like say South Korea, like Israel, like Singapore, these countries spend much more on research and development than our country does, both in terms of the percentage of GDP as well as the per capita investment on research. Our research investment should be of the order of 3% of GDP, while it is presently less than 1%. So if there is lack of funding, then obviously it has a multiplier effects in various avenues, various things that scholars face. A scholar has to have the appropriate equipment at hand in order to do the analysis, do the various parts of the research work. And that often is not available. One scholar of an institution has to send the samples to another institution somewhere, gets the results back quite sometime late. And these problems students face, and the fact that the funding agencies are also unable to disburse the funding on time can also be attributed to the fact that they also do not get the funding at appropriate times. So overall, it is basically a lack of empathy to the condition of the scholars that is at the root cause of this situation that the scholars face. But at the same time, I would say that in most institutions where PhD students do research, they come in with a view to be trained in the art of doing research. That is what the PhD level is actually supposed to be trained in the art of doing research, so that later at some stage, they can also themselves guide research. They should be trained to formulate problems. They should be trained to formulate the ways to attack problems, the methodology. And finally, the outcome of research is in the form of paper. They should be trained to write papers. What often happens is that in the university, so in doing that, that means they being able to being trained in the art of doing research starts with the art of asking questions. And therefore, the ambience of the research institutions have to be such that a questioning mind is encouraged. That question need not be only in research. The question can be other areas of life. But that doesn't often happen. Questioning the higher authorities often is looked down, not in an encouraging way. Effectively, we have in many institutions a kind of bureaucratic administrative structure, which does not provide a proper setting for the intellectual development of a PhD student. Another problem is that is a problem of our country, I would say, that we often place more emphasis on agreeing to the seniors to take whatever the seniors means. I being a senior to my PhD students, the PhD students are expected to take what I say without question. Now that attitude is also detrimental to the training of a student, because we have to encourage questioning mind. In the training of the researchers, there is also an issue that a researcher should be able to express at the end of the day whatever he or she has found in form of written expression to be written as papers. Tomorrow you will have to bring funding by writing grant proposals. So you have to be able to write. Unfortunately, on this count, I find that our research community, the students, at the time when they were going through school, they were dealt a raw hand, I would say, because at this time, the emphasis on languages have gone down to such an extent that one can get 90%, 95%, 98%, that kind of numbers without ever being able to write what they think. When we were kids, we were never asked to memorize essays. We used to write on our own. And getting 60% mark was our dream. We never got. If somebody got 60%, we used to congratulate him. Now, if somebody doesn't get 90%, everybody thinks he's very, very bad in language. The difficulty is that in that process, the students are not learning how to write, how to express one's own thoughts in articulate form of speech or writing. And that is being expressed in as a very important deficiency that many PhD students have right now. It's not a fault of theirs. It's a fault of the system. If you understand that this is a problem, then I would suggest that take adequate measures now in order to overcome that. The first step in order to overcome a deficiency is to understand that there is a deficiency. So if you understand that this is a deficiency, you need to start working on it right from now in order to overcome that by practicing writing every day, something or other. Reading literature and writing what you understood from that literature. So this is a way of practicing. If you day-to-day practice, then develop. So this is one aspect of the training of the PhD students, but there's another aspect. Many faculty members, because there is a pressure to publish, there's a pressure to publish, and the PhD student is often seen as a tool by which the publication is obtained. And as a result, the student is often not properly trained in the art of formulating a problem, planning a methodology of research, executing the methodology research. Often the PhD student is instructed to do this, do that, do this in the morning, do that in the afternoon. Ultimately, the student does that, maybe gets his PhD, but doesn't get trained adequately so that he or she can independently design a research problem in his later life. These are problems of the research scenario of the country. In addition to that, we have a scenario where the basic sciences and the social sciences are given a secondary importance by these policy planners, and every time more emphasis is given to applied research, engineering research, translational research. I'm not saying that translational research, engineering research, applied research is not necessary. All I'm saying is that unless there is a basic research, unless there is blue sky research, unless there is understanding regarding how the nature functions, you cannot apply that understanding to make something new. So the basis of applied research is basic research. And unless there is adequate support for basic research, applied research also cannot flourish. But you will find every time there is a Indian Science Congress, the Prime Minister has to go and give the introductory speech. And in every speech, there is a wholehearted emphasis, independent of who that Prime Minister comes from, with background. There's wholehearted emphasis on applied research and not on basic research. And that is reflected in the funding available in basic research, in the basic research institutions being guided towards more on applied research and things like that. And this problem of paucity of funds is reflected in the fact that students often do not get their fellowship. The number of CSIR fellowships available is way lower than what is really needed in a country like ours, where there is a huge number of aspiring PhD students who do not get a fellowship. There are only 3-4 avenues of getting a fellowship, like the CSIR fellowship, like the UGC fellowship, like the DSTS Inspire fellowship, and that's all. Nowadays, most institutions do not give their own fellowship. They expect students to bring fellowship from outside. So because of that, the students, PhD students, are facing a problem when the fellowship does not come. And these organizations, I know people who actually are inside the organization, they say that they are not getting adequate funding from the government at appropriate time, so they cannot disperse. So effectively, the problem is the lack of understanding on part of the people in the government regarding the necessities of a research atmosphere. If you have to do some experiment, you have to have the money to do that experiment. And the people who are doing that experiment have to have the, have to leave. So they have to have their fellowship in order to do that. So in order for science to flourish, these questions must be addressed. And it's a sorry fact that the people who wield the power to address these problems do not understand this problem. And that is why this is not a problem only of India. The problem became really acute in 2017 when scientists all across the globe felt that science is being given a raw deal, and therefore the scientists have to speak out. And then started what is known as the March for Science. In India also, there has been these marches for science every year since 2017, essentially to make the point that science is important for the society. Science is very important for the society, and therefore the society needs to support the scientific endeavors. And it's not society as a amorphous being. Effectively, its embodiment is the government, and the government has to adequately support scientific endeavors. And also important is the point that if a majority of the people believe in all sorts of unscientific ideas and superstitions, then it creates a sort of societal atmosphere which is not conducive to scientific development. Because the students come from that background. If they come from 100 different unscientific notions, ideas, superstitions, obviously they will have difficulty in absorbing scientific ideas, because scientific ideas start from the premise that everything that we believe must have evidence. And if somebody has been tuned from the childhood to believe things without evidence, it is very difficult for him or her to get used to the new way of thinking that science preaches. So one of the reasons that we are not very much advancing in science is because of this particular factor, that our education system is not training us adequately in the proper scientific way of thinking, in scientific technique. So when we face this situation of COVID, for example, you noticed that the steps that have been taken, I would say, cannot be called exactly scientifically advised. Obviously, a virus cannot go away if you bang utensils. We understand that. And the way the whole thing has been organized, you find that there is a lack of understanding about the nature of the pandemic itself. But it is true that the world has come to a standstill almost over the past few months. And if the world has come to a standstill, the educational institutions are deserted. The research scholars cannot do their own research. Obviously, their own research plan suffers. If the research plan suffers, it is obvious that they might not be able to complete their PhD work within a stipulated time of 5 years. And the government has to be sensitive to that issue. Unfortunately, it has been how much? since mid of March, April, May, June, July. So it has been about 5 months. And still there is no inkling that this problem is something that the government is bothered about. This is something that bothers me. Because I am the Dean of Academic Affairs of an institution where I have to deal with the PhD students, and we understand the problem they are facing, and yet the government is not yet blinking on this issue. You might ask that if the government is not earning what it used to, because the industry is down, because business is down, and therefore the government's income is also going down, in that situation, how can it spend on research? I would say exactly the opposite. I would say that this pandemic has shown us that science is the only way out. There's no other way to tackle a situation like this. There's no other way to tackle a situation like this other than doing science properly. And therefore, the fact that we are even not being able to do proper COVID research is that our research infrastructure is inadequate. And therefore, I would instead say that in a situation like this, there should be enhanced understanding that we have not done something right so far, and it is time to do that right by adequately supporting science, so that all these problems we can tackle using the tool of science. And therefore, there is no reason, I would say, to reduce funding for science. There may be a question, why not seek help from industry? Why should the government support all the funding? Well, the issue of industry-academia interaction has been there for the last 50 years. Many people have spent their lifetimes trying to attract industry funding to academic research. It's not a new issue, that's not what I'm saying. I have been in academia for about 35 years now, and right from the beginning of my time, I have seen this issue being discussed, and still it's being discussed. Why? Why hasn't the industry come forward to support academic research? The reason is essentially that in industry, in India, they do not have an economic reason to support academic research. In the European countries where Renaissance happened, the whole industrial revolution happened, and there, as research happened, the outcome of research were applied to industry, and the industry immediately understood the importance of research. They understood that unless they support research, they cannot survive in the market. So there was a support for research, and industrial support for academic research has been there from centuries. But in our country, since it was there was a colonial period, and 1947 we became independent. And when we became independent, we were dependent for all technology and science on the colonial power. And that subservient mentality is still persistent. And since the industry, the whole purpose of the industry is to earn maximum profit, they will do whatever it takes to earn maximum profit. They are not there to do any philanthropic activity. There's a general statement, and there are a few laudable exceptions. Please eliminate from that list. But in general, the industry is, or the entrepreneurs are only interested in earning maximum profit. If investing in academia earns maximum profit, they will do that. But to generate new science, new ideas, and then taking to fruition in the country, it takes a great deal of investment in order to do that. For them, it is far easier to buy technology from them. And therefore, our entrepreneurs, our industrialists find it easier, a shortcut route to buy technology from abroad. And that's why you will find that all the car companies, not a single car design is designed in India. All the designs come from abroad. Here they do the manufacturing. Why? Can't we design? We can. But if you ask, have you invested in any of the IITs or any of the institutions to design a new engine, things like that? No. So there is a subservient mentality. Let's accept it. Still, I would say that wherever it is possible to get funding from the industry, we should definitely try that. But depending on that and sort of saying that, okay, the government, if does not have enough money, then let government not support the academia. Rather, we should try the industry. That will. So the government has to support the academic research, the fundamental research, the blue sky research, the social science research adequately. Then only our industry can flourish. You probably have heard, well, before I go to the other topic, let me end this particular topic by saying that there has to be undisturbed funding for the PhD students, and there has to be empathy for the condition of the PhD students in the people who are there in the various ministries, especially now the education ministry. They have to understand the problem. And as yet, I have a feeling that that understanding is lacking. And so the DRSO, if that's the organization's name, I would suggest that they do everything possible in order to sensitize the people in the ministry about the problem. As in the beginning, Dibya Shankar said that the condition of PhD students is not very different from the conditions of the daily wage laborers. For months, they are not getting PhD fellowship. This is a major problem. Just imagine the condition of a PhD student who was about to submit when the lockdown was declared. Yes, his tenure is over. He gets no fellowship. And then he is continuing with this PhD work because there is no other way to do. He's unable to submit. And then he has to register for the next semester. And then there's a payment to be made for the registration of the next semester when there's no fellowship. It is a problem. Let's understand, it's a problem. And the DRSO has to talk about these problems. As you probably have heard, only a few days back, the new education policy has been announced. And this new education policy, I will not go into the details of all the details of the new education policy, but there are certain things that are likely to affect research in future. One is that there is a plan of this, disaffiliation of colleges. That means presently colleges are affiliated to the university, and even if you're a student of a college, you actually appear in the university exam and you get the degree given by the university. That gives a sanctity to your degree. Now there is a proposal to abolish that system, to make it unitary colleges. So if every college becomes a unitary college, able to offer its own degree, then there will be practically no value for the degree. The value of that degree that you have will go down, as a result of which your career will also be in jeopardy. So it is necessary to retain sanctity, the weightage, the gravity of the degree you earn. And for that, it is necessary to be affiliated to the university. The argument that is coming is that because there is such an affiliation system, the universities are spending most of their resources on the examinations and things like that, and not involving in research. That is not the problem. The issue is that every university can have a system of conducting the examinations out of the research ambit. It is possible highly, It is only a question of setting up the appropriate system. And it is not a question of, by freeing the universities of this additional burden, there will be, surge in research. That will not go on. On the other hand, the students that are coming through the university system, after taking a standardized examination, that standardization of the examination will go away. Every college will start competing with each other in giving the highest possible marks. So everybody will get very good marks, 95 to 100%, and everybody will know that mark doesn't carry it. So this is going to be a major problem. As you know that now there is a situation where we are having to recourse to online classes. It is true that the nation is definitely not prepared for it. We do not have the infrastructure for it. Most of the students do not have the adequate connectivity. Even see the status of connectivity right in the beginning of this talk, when Argo was speaking, he got disconnected because of the connectivity issues. Now imagine students are attending classes, we are delivering lectures online, and we are facing these problems. How can a proper education go on this way? Sometimes students are not being able to hear because my connectivity is poor. Sometimes the students are not being able to hear because his connectivity is poor. And there's a large number of students from remote areas where there is practically no connectivity. How can they access education? Effectively, this is creating, again, another layer of haves and have-nots, which is detrimental to the future of the country. But one might argue that in this situation, what can we do? The colleges cannot open. Students cannot sit next to each other. People have to keep a physical distance between each other. So then what can you do? That's not the question I'm raising. I'm raising the question that in the new education policy, the online mode of teaching, distance education, is being projected as the new normal. When the COVID problem goes away, this will become a valid way of conveying knowledge. This is a problem. Proper education cannot happen without a physical mixing between the teacher and the student. It is not only the content, it's not only the equations and theorems and lemmas and information that we convey. Basically, we convey ideas. And these cannot be conveyed just online by listening to online lectures uploaded on YouTube, maybe offered through the TV. It does not convey the same thing. Therefore, a proper contact education being replaced, at least in part, by distance mode is a very dangerous proposition. I would definitely not support it. As you have probably heard, that now there is a proposal of creating what is known as, what is being called as National Research Foundation. So far, our scientific research was funded by a few funding agencies that included DST, its wing SCRB, the DBT, the DIT, the CSIR, and things like that. These are the organizations that received money from the government and that disbursed among the institutions that are supported by these funding agencies, and also research projects were funded by this. And a few institutions were supported by the Ministry of Human Research and Development at that time. Now it is being converted to the Education Ministry. So that was the sort of funding structure. Now they are saying that a new entity called NRF will be created, which will practically control all funding. But initially, in the initial draft, they suggested that these funding agencies that exist right now will be sort of dissolved into the NRF, effectively creating one entity. In the present draft, I have not yet gone through it line by line, but as far as I've heard, they're saying that these entities will continue to exist, but obviously with lesser importance, slowly the importance and the funding will shift to the NRF. The effect is that the way we get funding is that we submit research proposals, and that research proposal is considered by that funding agency by sending it to reviewers. Finally, a decision is taken, I get the funding or not get the funding. Now, with the funding going down, the number of projects being approved by these agencies is also going down. I am a member of some of these committees. I know that these are going down. And in many cases, even if the project is funded, that means project is approved by the committees of which I am also a member, still the recipient is not getting the money because the funding agency does not have that. The situation is because there is not enough funding support for scientific research. But we have a possibility that if my project proposal is rejected by one funding agency, then it is possible to submit it to another funding agency. Maybe with some changes, maybe by taking the feedback from the earlier set of reviewers, I submit it to another funding agency. If there is one funding agency, effectively, then that possibility will go away. So this is sort of a centralization, which is not really conducive to development of science and technology in the country. I would say a more adequate form would be decentralized system of funding, so that a researcher has various possibilities of seeking funds for his or her own research. If there's only one funding possibility, then many researchers will find themselves without any scope of obtaining funding. If that NRF starts to visualize only translational research, applied research as the only fundable research, meaningful research, then we are done. Blue sky research, new ideas will never be funded and supported because there's no other funding agency to support that. That is a very, this centralization is detrimental to research. In the similar way, the higher education, HECI, the education, the funding agency that has been created, the NRF for research funding, the other educational institutions will be funded by HECI. That's also a centralized system. A centralized system with a bureaucratic governance has the problem that it cannot foster adequate democratic thinking. Democratic means a democratic style of functioning. Everybody's opinions are being taken into account while formulating policies. That's a democratic system of functioning. That will no longer be effective because it will be more bureaucratic system of functioning. So HECI is also another problematic idea that has been brought through this new education policy that might affect the research atmosphere in future. I will end the discussion by saying that in this situation, the research scholars have a lot to do because they have a lot at stake. How the situation will pan out and what will be the new normal after the COVID situation depends on how the research scholars raise their voice, be heard, and how those who form the policies become sensitive to the problems faced by research scholars and the research environment as a whole. We are also part of the research environment, but research scholars are also an integral part of that research environment, and the whole thing depends on how the system becomes sensitive to the health issues of this scientific establishment. And that scientific establishment cannot have a good health without a good health of the scholar community. So I would say that the scholars have to raise their voice, their demand, their opinion, and thereby make their problems felt by the policymakers. I will stop here, and if there are questions, I will take them. Orko, you can now collect the questions and ask. Can you hear? Orko may have a connectivity issue. So Dibashankar, can you take over?
Argo, you have to unmute yourself. Can you do that? No, I can't unmute you. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So I will just request the participants, if they have questions, they can send the questions. I mean, if they want to ask questions, there is two options. So they can send their names or their willingness to ask question in the chat box, which the Dibashankar he will look into. And actually there are shortage of time, so we need to have a discussion session, and we expect to take some 8 to 10 questions from Facebook and from the chat. But in the meantime, so you please submit your questions in the chat box. And there are previous questions that have been received by us from the scholars who have registered. So I just put out, start the interaction session by putting this one question to Professor Soumitra Banerjee. So there is several issues the research scholars are facing right now. For example, the issues of their tenure, that they are just sitting in their home and for a quite long time, and no one knows how long it is going to be extended. So there is a issue of tenure extension, and then there is huge uncertainty in postdoc recruitment or faculty recruitment. So all these things in this pandemic situation, how do you see this? Can this be resolved realistically?
Well, yes, this can be resolved realistically if the government takes a decision that all PhD students who have lost research time will be given an extension with fellowship of more or less the time that they have lost. A ballpark figure may be 6 months. So a 6 months extension. So I would definitely want that from the government. I know that many directors of institutions have written to the government requesting this, but as yet, no concrete decision has been heard after so many months. So we don't know. But yes, the solution is definitely possible. The solution is easy. It has to be supported. This lost time has to be, is definitely not a problem created by the PhD students. It is a problem that was beyond the control of PhD students. And therefore, they should not be blamed for that. They should not be disadvantaged because of that. And I would say that the DRSO should demand a flat 6 months extension of the fellowship for every PhD student.
Thank you, sir. In this regard, the question of postdoc positions or the faculty positions, which is, I think, not so straightforward to demand. So how do you look at that?
No, these will be a bit tricky because at this time, faculty recruitment are mainly kept on hold. Postdoc, postdoc recruitment is not really kept on hold, but it varies from institute to institute. Some institute may have kept this postdoc recruitment also on hold. Faculty recruitment and all the examinations that are conducted centrally or at the state levels for the college faculty, university faculty recruitment. These things are definitely now kept on hold. So the students, PhD students who are graduating now will have to wait for some time. And it is a problem, I understand. But this problem is not very easy to solve, because at this time, if we recommend that the exams be conducted, it is not easy to conduct an examination with social distancing requirements. So that's a more tricky issue. That's a more tricky issue. The PhD students who are graduating now may have to wait for some time before being properly absorbed. And that is true not only for our country, that's true for other countries also, where our PhD students go for postdoc. Well, going out of the country has become very difficult now. Many countries are not issuing visa, and so the situation is rather fluid. So that problem is not very easy to solve, but within the country, making the postdoc positions available is possible. Increasing the number of postdocs, that means the NPDF, the National Postdoctoral Fellowship, is a necessity at this time, because the students cannot go abroad right now for doing their postdoc. So they have to be absorbed within the country for doing postdoc. And the postdoc fellowship comes from the NPDF. Therefore, the NPDF number has to increase. This is a solution. Yes, that can be done. And that is something that can be demanded by the DSO.
Thank you, sir. So if there is a question from the audience, please tell your name and institution and put your question to the context.
Yeah, Tanya Roy has raised hand, so you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly. Tanya Roy, can you hear me?
I think the host have to unmute him.
No.
Robin, maybe.
No, she has to unmute herself.
Okay, maybe we'll go back to him. Asif, you have a question from Facebook. Can you unmute yourself and ask?
No, from Facebook, will they be able to ask questions? Probably you have to read out the question.
No, Asif, yeah, you have to read out.
No, you have to read out the question. They can write on the chat of the Facebook page.
Okay, so it is apart from raising our voices to the authority, how do you overcome the deficiency these 5-6 non-functioning months?
By equipping yourselves more in the areas where you are deficient. That's why in the beginning of my talk, I was telling certain things that the research students have to absorb while being in the research program. And often we cannot absorb that because of various reasons. And this is a time when you are not exactly engaged in research, but this is a time when you have to, you can consider the issues. How to formulate a research problem, how to formulate a research methodology, how to formulate a grant proposal, how do I write what I have done. So these are practices that one has to do. And this is a good time to do that when you are not being directly engaged in research. That means day-to-day taking data, analyzing data, and things like that. All that activity is not there. So this is a time when you can improve your understanding. You can improve your understanding regarding have I been able to absorb the methodology of thinking that science preaches? Ask yourself, are all my beliefs based on evidence? Ask yourself and practice thinking that way. And above all, learn language well. Learn science is, after all, English is after all a language, international language of science. You can't do science without learning English. And therefore, it is necessary for us, all of us, to learn English not as a foreign language, but as a language of science. So we can utilize this time to enrich ourselves more. And when this pandemic disappears, we can face the society in a better way. So that is what we ourselves can do, the students can do. But yes, we need this support, that I'll again say, that support has to be given by the government.
Okay, we have another question from Praveen Kumar Mahato. Praveen, would you like to unmute? Yeah.
Yeah, myself Praveen Kumar from Ranchi University, Ranchi, Jharkhand. I have a question, sir, regarding NEP 2020. Will the 4-year undergraduate course, including basically research, be beneficial for the student and research?
Yes, the issue is that that program has been proposed. I've seen that. And that program is already in force in, say, the IISc Bangalore and some such institutions, which have a very good research environment. If the institution has a research environment and the students, even undergraduate students, the BS students, they can be involved in the research, then and then only it becomes meaningful. But is it fact with all colleges and universities in the country? Is it a fact with unitary colleges, now that there is a proposal to make colleges as unitary colleges, the remotely located colleges, the Mofussil colleges, are they in a position to expose students to research? But what will happen is that the period of study will go up, therefore the expense of study will go up, and effectively, apart from a handful of institutions, the students all over the country will not benefit from this. That's my understanding of this particular
Okay,
problem.
Sumanto, you have raised hand. You can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hi, sir. I am Sumanto Kumar Ghosh, and I am from Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. So my question is, in this emergency situation, all our community is facing a tremendous amount of problem. So can we think emergency task force which will be formed by the government, and it will ensure how to overcome these emergency situations in the upcoming years? What's your opinion in this?
That can be done, but for a task force to be effective, it not only has to be a national level task force. A national level task force will only formulate the national level policies, but that has to be implemented at the state level, at the district level, and such levels. And in each level, there has to be a task force. Even in institutions, universities, within the university also there has to be a task force in order to tackle a pandemic situation like this. So not only a national level task force, but at every level there has to be a task force where there would be people who are exposed to epidemiology. There have to be doctors. There has to be public health professionals. There have to be so there have to be people who know the business. With that, if proper scientific strategies are formulated, it is possible to tackle the pandemic. There are countries who have shown that it's possible. How much was the spread in South Korea, for example? How much was the spread in Taiwan, for example? In Singapore? These are the countries that were first affected. But they have been able to come out of it because of a scientific strategy. We also need to take a scientific strategy, and you are right, one can form a task force at all levels in order to implement it properly.
Yeah, okay.
There is one question actually. One of our Facebook viewers is waiting for a long. This is how far do you think lack of scholarship or untimely issuance of scholarship has significant impact on the quality of research?
No, that is highly demoralizing for the PhD student if one does not receive fellowship. See, after you complete your BSc, MSc, you are not supposed to be supported by your parents. You are supposed to be not only self-supporting, but also you should be able to support your family. And if a PhD student is unable to do that because the fellowship is not coming, then it puts enormous mental pressure on the student. And in that kind of mental pressure, the student cannot perform in research. Research is a mental activity. And if the student is mentally stressed because of these extraneous factors, the student cannot perform. And therefore, I'm saying it is extremely important to give guaranteed fellowship, at least for a period of 5 years, so that freed from all other thinking, all other stresses, the student can focus on one thing, namely research. And this has not happened, and that's why there is a problem. The outcome is poor because I cannot say the student is poor, but you didn't give him proper support. And this has happened not only in 1 or 2 cases, this has happened in large scale. And that has effectively resulted in our relatively poor performance in research, which could have been improved if this problem were not there. Next question.
Asif, do you have any question from Facebook?
If this question has been answered,
Yeah.
apart from raising our voices to the authority.
Yeah, this is answered.
Yes. Then we received only 2 questions from the Facebook. One is there, it's a kind of comment actually. So it means in post-COVID period, government will only concentrate on technological research funding. So obviously in due course of time, the research work in our country on fundamental sciences will become stagnant. I think it's in the form of it's a question, but in the form of comment. The viewer wants to know.
No, I would only react to that by saying that the policy statement might not say so. The policy statement might say that we will support research and things like that. But in order to really support research, the will of the government has to be reflected in the funding for research. Similarly, in the NEP, the New Education Policy, the first new education policy came in 1968. Since then, it has been recognized that at least 6% of the GDP has to be spent on education, and no government has yet done that. This education policy also says it is to be raised to 6%. So the effective will of the government will be reflected whether or not the spending on education, on science, on research are enhanced to the level which is necessary in order to really make a mark in the world of science. So it may not be an announced policy to sort of subdue basic research or social science research. But if there is a paucity of fund, it will effectively come to that. Because then, with a small amount of fund that is available, the translational and applied research will take a bigger chunk of it, lion's share of it, because that is seen as something that is meaningful, that is of immediate relevance. And blue sky research is often seen as not of immediate relevance. Get the point?
Yeah.
We have one more question.
Okay. Yeah.
Sukanya from Raman Research Institute. Not only amount of funds, but a strategic flow of funding and fundings needed for beneficial outcome. What is your comments about the planning and distribution of existing and upcoming funds?
Firstly, as far as the funding distribution is concerned, there is an issue whether or not if the funding is distributed or enhanced, then it will be properly utilized. So there has to be a check and balance mechanism which all universities should be subjected to, which means that there has to be a not only a support but also a accountability. But the educational institutions, the universities, the research institutions, each one of them is an autonomous institution. An autonomous institution means that it has freedom in choosing in which avenue the funding will be spent. The funding that comes, it should have complete freedom in choosing whether to open a new department, whether to buy a new equipment, whether to spend on some other facilities. It is completely its own decision. And the government should support that. What it should contain, what it should stop are essentially misuse of funds. So importance is that by saying accountability, I'm also at the same time telling that every institution should be should have the independent power of deciding where it spends the fund, so long as the fund is not misused. And there has to be a proper mechanism of ensuring that this is done. But another issue is that in our country, the universities receive far less funds than many of the research institutions per capita, per student. If you think of how much money is spent on a student in IIT, and student in university, you will find that far less fund is spent on a university. I'm not meaning thereby that there's an overflow of fund into the IITs. No, that fund is also inadequate. But the universities are meted out a raw deal by actually giving far less fund than what is really needed in order to excel in research. So, an equity has to be established, and universities have to receive. If there is an enhancement of funding, that enhanced funding should go more to the universities than to the institutions which are already properly, almost properly endowed with. These are my 2 points on this issue.
Yeah, we have one question in Zoom. She says that, do you think government will concentrate more on medical research rather than overall research in post-COVID condition?
There is already an indication because the number of, the way the research funding works is that the government makes announcements as in some directed areas. So in this particular area, if there is a proposal, then it will be considered under one particular head, and there's funding in that particular head. These are called the areas of importance. And what the areas of importance are essentially decided by the people in the funding agencies as well as the government agencies. Now we have a situation where medical research, COVID research are becoming important. And I don't question that. That has to be important. But if there's a quantum of funding available and a major share is going into that kind of research, then obviously the amount that is available for other research goes down. So my suggestion would be to enhance research funding and give adequate funding to COVID research. There's no problem. But there has to be also adequate funding for other branches of science, technology, and social sciences.
Okay, so Mukhtiar Ahmed, you raised hand. Can you unmute yourself? It seems no.
In the meantime, let me place one more question. It's from Prashanta. If there is one agency, procedures should be smooth. We get regular fellowship, is it not?
What if that one agency delays? Then at least presently there is a possibility that the UGC is delaying, but the CSI is disbursing at proper time. If that agency delays, then everybody gets it. So it is not by one agency it will be better, because it depends how that one agency functions. And centralization has its advantages as far as the administration is concerned, but it has its disadvantage as far as the democratic functioning is concerned, as well as the receiving end people are concerned. It has its disadvantages. So presently, the move of the government was centralization of all funding. They want to control all funding, and that will have sooner or later its own problematic aspects.
Okay, so another question. Someone asked, even if the government does extend the tenure of the research scholar, wouldn't the quality of research performed by the students go down due to the COVID situation? How much it will affect the future of scientific research in India?
Assuming that the government gives the support, then at least the mental pressure on the PhD students will go down, and therefore they will be able to at least psychologically perform better. But the time lost is time lost. Okay. In biology, there are organisms that have to be kept alive and they are dead. So time lost is time lost. And the COVID impacted that will impact research output in a negative way significantly. But one way of sort of ameliorating that would be by at least making the PhD students' mental burden less, so that sitting at home also they can be intellectually productive.
Yeah, so two people have raised hand, but I think they cannot unmute themselves. One is Tania Roy and other Mukhtiar Ahmed. So if you two can unmute yourself, you can ask.
Or they can write the question in the chat box to you.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I just want to put forward another question which had came earlier from the scholars registered. So in the COVID situation, and in particular in a country like India, where there is acute poverty, there is no food security, no security to health, no security to job. So this should be priority, right? So why do we demanding so much funds for education and research?
Your voice open off.
Could you hear me?
Not the last sentence.
Okay. So yeah. So when there is so much other priority areas like healthcare, education, food security, this kind, then why we are demanding so much funds for research, which is not really that priority, like our survival or job, apparently.
Well, this year, while the COVID is still raging, this point might be, in some sense, true. But I would request you to consider the issue. Is the government really doing anything to address this issue, these problems? When was the Rafale aircraft bought? Exactly at the time when the country needs to feed its people. So the money is actually going somewhere. All we are saying is that to spend it in the avenues, the areas which will really matter in future. And yes, people's livelihood and people's life by actually strengthening the state hospital system, government hospital system. This is really a necessity. If you spend on that, I'm sure that will not reduce the amount that is available for research. Because the amount that is actually spent on research is something like 0.85% of the GDP. It's nothing, zero. Very close to zero. If it is doubled, then also it will not impact. There are far more share of money going elsewhere, and that is what we need to look at. That's what we need to look at. So by retaining the level of funding in research or increasing the level of funding in research will not impact the other possible more urgent necessities. That has to come from other areas of expenditure.
Thank you, sir. So, is the questions come from Tanya and others?
No, sorry, they haven't written it.
Hello, I have a question. May I ask?
Yeah, please
Yes.
tell your
Yes.
name and university. Or
I'm Antika Sinha. I teach in a PG college, Ashutosh College. So my department is computer science. Now, sir, I would like to ask. Yes, the minor major research project has to be done. So now in the era of interdisciplinary research, so if a young faculty like me who is interested in actually pursuing some database or highly computational kind of research, even by the students or by self as well, so it becomes a helpful step if some minor research fellowship or something is get or something like that, because we know that UGC minor research funding is stopped for.
Your voice was breaking. I could not get the question properly. If I understood, then your question was that you are interested in working in data-driven research, which involves computation. Yes, that can be done even in the COVID situation. There's no difficulty with that kind of research. So I don't see any difficulty in continuing that kind of research during the COVID situation, because even if you are sitting at home, even if you only have a laptop or even a mobile phone in your hand, it's possible to connect to a stronger computer in some research institution and run your codes. So it is, that area is not impacted by COVID really.
Yeah, Tanya Roy, go ahead. Hello?
Probably she is not being able to.
Yeah, okay. So then, Argo, I don't have any more questions here.
yeah, so we are actually just near the end of this webinar. So for me, it is again a learning experience, and I'll just tell that as Professor said, there are several issues. There are skewed priorities on behalf of the policymakers. There are really money available, but that is not channelized as per necessities. At the same time, there is this colonial mindset which we, or the hangover, which we could not yet come out of. So in this situation, and also the hierarchy in the administration and the institutions in which the research ambience that is evolving. So what is the role do you suggest of the research scholars, of the concerned faculties, of us?
I would say developing a questioning mind, nurture the habit of doubting, asking questions, understand the thinking process that science teaches and try to adopt even in your day-to-day thinking, not only in research, and be sensitive to the problems of the society, because we are also social beings, we are also part of the society, and whatever happens to the society, that also impacts us. It's only for research scholars, I would say, that it is important to adopt a scientific temper. It is important to be sensitive to the social problems, and it is also important to be vocal. To be vocal, to make the problems that you students are facing known to the people who manage. That's my.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And of course, as an organization, DRSO will strive in this regard to inculcate all the things you said, and also to raise our voice, and also to be aware of the society. And of course, again, I just go back to what I have started by saying, giving the instance of Sir Prafulla Chandra Roy. So he is also, I mean, one of the pioneers, as I feel, that in which the scientists, they can come out of their lab when the society really needs. He constituted Khulna Relief Society and Bengal Relief Society when there is flood almost 100 years back, and following his lead, DRSO actually organized relief camps for the Amphan distressed people who are, I mean, devastated by the Amphan cyclone. And it is a really new feeling, and of course, we will try to take forward this inheritance. And with this, I just like to conclude, but before that, one announcement. So the India March for Science initiative will take place on 9th August as usual, but this year this will be an online initiative. So the March for Science committees in every cities, they have taken programs and some certain plans to take part. And as DRSO is one of the participants in March for Science, we will also take part in this initiative, and all the research scholars who are here and who will be hearing the talk later and the discussion. So please do participate, and please make sure that even in the COVID situation, our void does not get depleted. So with this, I want to thank again Professor Soumitra Banerjee and Dibbo Shankar, Praveen and Asif for all the management and
Before
all the
you
research
conclude,
scholars.
Before you conclude, there is an appeal, actually appeal for the membership. Please you do that for the scholars. To the scholars, those who haven't fill their membership form for DRSO if they want to become one.
Yeah, thank you, Ashik. Yeah, this is another announcement. You should become member. We suggest you to become member of DRSO, and also we'll send you the feedback form. We'll give your feedback, and we'll organize further webinars and programs based on your feedback. So, okay, let us finish it here, and see you again. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you all.